Hello, and welcome to the Catching the Octopus podcast. Here, we will explore how connecting inward gives us an advantage outward. We openly talk about the obstacles and challenges and difficulties that life throws our way and how they become moments of gratitude and things that can benefit us when we look back on our lives. I'm your host, Niomi Hurley, and it is my mission to bring you top quality guests that will share with you openly their obstacles and also the techniques they use to go inward that strengthens the way that they serve themselves and others at the highest level. Thank you for joining. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to this episode of Catching the Octopus podcast. I just wanted to do a recap today on my interview with Megan Hazeldean. So Megan and I were friends in year 7. I moved down to Bunbury and started year 7 in Bunbury, and she was kind of my first friend down here, and we become BFFs, and our families even got to know each other and remained in contact for a fair few years. So, you know, little did I know that at the time we would actually end up just reconnecting on and off throughout our lives. And, you know, there's some friends that you have in school that you move on from and you never see again. And that's not the case with Megan. And I'm really grateful that I made that connection with her way back then. She's an amazing individual, and the episode was so much fun. And it's quite strange because we were talking about her new project that she's putting together, which is assisted dying, her project is Dying Right Australia, which is about assisted dying and helping people be able to be comfortable in their home, you know, when they're in their last days and setting something up. And that came about for her when she lost a friend of hers to a terminal illness. And when, you know, they were in the hospital, and she just spoke up to the doctor and said, you know, I could help her be at home. You know, the doctor had said that people that die at home usually have a lot of money, right? Because there's a lot of costs involved, and she volunteered to do it for free. And that just shows that inner sense of her that wants to serve others. And that is a really important part of leadership, is being able to serve others at your highest level, right? And not really looking for a return on what that's going to give you. And we did talk about altruism quickly in the session, and being altruistic, you know, doing things without any expectation of return, and whether that really is a thing, because, you know, or not even expectation of a return rather, but doing things without getting a return for them. And there's some people that do things without an expectation of getting a return, but I challenge that altruism fact or that whole concept, because when we help others, you know, even if we don't have an expectation for something in return, it does something within our hearts, right? It helps warm our hearts, and it gives us something that might not be tangible and something that you can actually hold, but it gives you something from within. And so I can see how much that drives Megan. She volunteers for a range of things as well. And, you know, she's doing some great work in this space of setting up this foundation to be able to help people that don't have a whole heap of money, that can then come home with their families, right? And spend those last days with their families. And the thing that was probably strange to me is I haven't been around a lot of death. So I'm not used to it being something that's so lighthearted. You know, it's something that we normally look at that's really quite heavy and really weighs on us. And so normalizing the fact that we all die and having those conversations without them being yucky and heavy are really important for families that are going through that space of coming into assisted dying. And so it was quite strange that we were cracking jokes and laughing and having a good time while we were doing the interview for me, but not for her, because that's the space that she's in, right? She likes to make people feel comfortable in that space, and is going to create this foundation to give that education and support to those that are near death, and also to their families and their support networks and those sorts of things. So great work that she's doing. And some of the highlights that came out of our conversation and also around the way that she approaches herself was, first one was speaking up. Leaders, true leaders, don't have to be CEOs and managers of big businesses and in super leadership roles. Leaders speak up when something needs to be said. And, that's what she did in that hospital room. She saw an opportunity that she needed to speak up about, and she did. And that all then started snowballing on everything else. We also touched on moving out of your comfort zone, right? And Megan, although she is so fun loving and she's a great personality, there's a little bit of an introvert there, right? And so getting up and doing this sort of thing is going to really put her out of her comfort zone. Standing up in front of people and teaching and sharing this knowledge and creating this educational awareness is something that probably isn't as natural for her as it is for someone like myself. But that's not going to stop her. Right? She has this soul-led purpose to be able to create this and move into this space. And to do so, she's going to need to come out of her comfort zone. And she's recognized that and she's working on that. And that is a really great indication to me, of a great leader. People that sit within their comfort zone, they don't feel like they need to do training because they know it all. They don't feel like they need to do any inner work or change because they've been this way forever and that's just the way they present. Those people that don't see the opportunities of actually pushing themselves that little bit further to become in a better space, to become a person that can serve at a higher level. Right? That's where true leadership lies, is being able to come into a space, push through that comfort zone so that you can serve at a higher level to those around you. And I just love how Megan is approaching that and doing that in such a strong way. We talked a lot about serving others because that's kind of been her passion, right? That's what got her into nursing in the first place. And although she went into midwifery and was into that start of life and the commencement of life and celebrating that for so long in her career, there came a point where she realized that there was two ends to life, and we don't really celebrate the end of life as much as we do the beginning of life. And so that's now taking her into that other space.
If you're enjoying this podcast and you want Niomi or any of her guests featured on your podcast or as a keynote speaker at your next event, you'll find their contact details included in the show notes. If you'd like to learn more about how you can work with Niomi individually or as part of your strategy to improve leadership in your business, then review the courses, offers and services at getupandgrowconsulting.com.au.
Something else she said that stood out to me was when she was in midwifery and she started losing that passion for it, or that interest in it rather, and she went to change career paths, right? Not realizing that all these things were setting her up for what she was actually meant to be doing in life, for what her true purpose was. And stepping through those times where you're not sure of where you are and if that's where you're meant to be is a completely natural part of our life. It's a completely natural part of our progression and our growth and our evolution as humans navigating our way through this lifetime. So I loved how she was able to still push through that and then find that space where she could reflect inwards, right? Take the time out, sit there with herself and find out what is it that really makes her soul sing. What is it that she's really, really wanting to do here? And moving out of that place of a zone of excellence, which she was as a midwife, she was in that excellence, to that place of genius, to where you're actually meant to be and where things come easy to you. Or it's not a hard slog and it's not difficult to do the things because they're inbuilt in you. That's what you're born to do. And moving into that zone of genius is something that not a lot of people do. We get to a point within our careers, within our lives, within our families and our personal space where we're in a zone of excellence. We know what we're doing. We do it well. In fact, we probably excel at it. And so we have this sort of, okay, this is where I'm meant to be, without following that calling from our heart to push that extra step and move from that zone of excellence into that zone of genius. And that resonated with me a lot, because that kind of was my calling. That's what happened to me. So I was in corporate safety and HR, and I was really, really good at what I did. And in that safety space, I was even across the whole transport industry. That was the last job that I had in corporate. And across the transport industry, I was known for being the safety manager. I was part of a safety association. I was interactive with all of those sorts of things. I was delivering presentations through TransSafe as on behalf of MGM, the company I was working for. And I was having a good time, but I was in my zone of excellence, right? And I got to a point where I was doing it that often, I was doing it that well, that it became second nature to me, but it stopped coming from my heart. I suppose it stopped. My heart wasn't singing anymore. It just became a job. It just became something I did. And although I set up a lot of things where I got my, where I was able to achieve, right? And I got that sense from those achievements, they weren't real deep, right? They were just superficial things that I was achieving along that space. And that's when I started moving into doing my psychology degree and thinking about other ways I could help people, because I knew that that's where my heart needed to go. And when I started following that and going into that space, I mean, I started Get Up and Grow Consulting, and here I am now. Either you're watching me on YouTube or you're listening to me on your podcast platform. And this is my zone of genius, right? This is what I love to do. And I feel like it comes easy to me. Now, doesn't mean that I'm not working at it. I'm always still trying to refine my skills, and I'm still learning, and I'm doing courses, and I'm catching up with people, not just in interviews on the podcast, but also in one-to-ones outside, right? People who can challenge me and who can help me grow and that I can learn from. And that is where my heart sings. Right. So that whole step, coming out of your comfort zone and coming from that zone of excellence into that zone of genius, is another true sign of an amazing leader. And Megan is doing just that in what she's trying to set up with her foundation. So another word that she said that really stuck out to me is passion, or being passionate about what she does. And if you've listened to the interview, you will know that human is full of passion. She's just a ball of passion, and that's infectious, right? And she spoke about, not recognizing herself as a leader because she's also always been guided by other people. And, coming into that space as a mum and having kids, and then having her kids' friends come over, and all of them asking for her advice and her guidance, was the first time that she actually recognized that maybe she is a leader. And maybe she just didn't see that before or recognize that before, because although she was turning to other people for that advice and guidance, there were people around her turning to her. And so sometimes we don't need to be fully out there screaming from the mountaintops, we're a leader, to actually fall into a leadership capacity. And that's exactly what happened with her. So her foundation is called Dying Right Australia, and it's a really great initiative. And I really encourage you to reach out and support it in any way that you can, or even reach out to Megan and ask for some more information about it, because I feel like where she's taking this and where she wants to go with it is going to be so helpful for so many people. And it's just, one of those things where you've got this ordinary human, if you can say that, just going about their day-to-day life that is just inspired and driven to go to that next level, and doing all of the things we talked about, coming out of the comfort zone, serving others, speaking out when needed. She's being able to do that. And the last point I just wanted to cover was that community. right? Getting the right community around you. And she spoke about that when she was talking about her colleague at the hospital that was in, setting up their own concepts around, stillborn births and how they can support families in that space, and how she's got this like wide range of great people around her that are supporting her. She's got the family of her friend that she lost that's behind her and that's supporting her. She reached out and sent me a message recently just to brainstorm with me and pick my brain about starting this foundation, and knowing that I'd just recently gone into business and established something. And so she's able to recognize that she doesn't know it all. I mean, none of us know it all, right? And she's recognized that, and she's reaching out to people within her networks that can help her get to that next level and help her create that space where she's being led by her soul, which I think is just magical. And that led me to sharing a little story about when we were kids together, and one of our memories there when I was at her house for a sleepover, and just the fact that she helped support me, to achieve that goal. And the support from her has then stayed throughout my whole lifetime. And just that importance around having the right people around you and having that strength and capability to reach out to them, to have conversations with them, to ask them for help, to get advice from them. I haven't met one person that I've spoken to that has gone, oh, I don't want to help you and give you advice, right? It's part of us as leaders, as humans, that we're designed to help each other and want each other to grow. And I just love how well she's doing in that space as well. So if you haven't as yet had a listen to that episode, and I say this on every one of my recaps, I suggest you go and have a listen. It was so much fun. It was a lot of fun. It was a very raw and authentic interview. It was just two old school friends having a chat, and there was some amazing gold nuggets in there. And I'm very grateful that Megan jumped on as a guest, and I hope you enjoy that episode. Thanks for joining in and listening to this episode of Catching the Octopus podcast. It's been great having you here. And if you'd like to go and like and subscribe and maybe even leave a 5-star rating if you think it's worth it, I'd really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.